And if you harbor this one emotion, you will slowly destroy yourself before you do anything else. Listen to me carefully. There is an emotion you may be carrying every single day that nobody else can see. You smile while carrying it. You pray while carrying it. You go to work while carrying it. You sleep beside it. And if you refuse to release it, it will slowly poison your peace, your relationships, your joy, your faith, and eventually your very soul. That emotion is resentment. It begins with a wound, but if you keep feeding it, the wound becomes a prison. Somebody hurt you, somebody betrayed you, somebody lied about you, somebody abandoned you, somebody treated you unfairly, and now you replay it and again and again in your mind. But hear this, what happened to you may not have been your choice, but carrying it forever is a decision you must confront. There are people who are exhausted not because they are carrying too much responsibility, but because they are carrying too much anger. They have been hurt, and instead of allowing God to heal the wound, they have built an identity around the wound. They say, I will never trust again. I will never forgive them. I will never forget what they did. I will make sure they regret it. And they believe these words are expressions of strength. But sometimes what we call strength is actually bondage. Sometimes what we call justice is revenge wearing religious clothing. Sometimes what we call remembering is simply refusing to heal. And today I want you to understand something that may be difficult to hear. Your resentment does not punish the person who hurt you nearly as much as it punishes you. Think about that. The person who wounded you may be sleeping peacefully while you lie awake remembering what happened. They may have moved forward while you remain emotionally trapped in yesterday. They may have forgotten the words they said. While you repeat them inside your mind every morning, they may have continued their life while you continue living inside the moment that broke you. And this is why resentment is so dangerous. It convinces you that you are holding somebody else accountable while secretly destroying something inside you. You think you are holding the offense, but eventually the offense begins holding you. You think you are refusing to forgive them, but eventually your refusal to forgive begins controlling your thoughts, your emotions, your relationships, and your peace. You wake up angry. You go to sleep angry. You meet innocent people and distrust them because of what one person did. Someone tries to love you, but you push them away because someone else betrayed you. Someone speaks kindly to you, but you suspect their motives because someone else deceived you. Someone gives you an opportunity, but you are afraid because someone else once rejected you, and slowly, without realizing it, the person who hurt you begins controlling relationships they are not even present in. That is the tragedy of resentment. The offender leaves the room, but you keep them inside your heart. The conversation ended years ago, but you continue having it every night. The betrayal happened once, but you relive it 1,000 times. The wound happened in the past, but you keep allowing it to speak into your present. And God is saying to you today, my child, you cannot change what happened, but you can decide what happens next. You cannot rewrite yesterday. You cannot make someone apologize. You cannot force someone to understand what they did to you. You cannot control whether they ever recognize the pain they caused. But you can surrender your heart to God. You can say, Lord, I cannot carry this anymore. And perhaps that is where your healing begins. Not when they apologize, not when they finally understand, not when you receive the justice you imagined, but when you place the entire matter into the hands of God. Because there is a difference between forgiveness and pretending that nothing happened. Forgiveness does not mean saying what they did was acceptable. Forgiveness does not mean allowing someone to abuse you again. Forgiveness does not mean you must restore every relationship to its former closeness. Forgiveness does not mean there are no consequences. Forgiveness means you refuse to allow the evil done to you to become evil living inside you. You say, they hurt me, but I will not become hateful. They lied about me, but I will not become a liar. They betrayed me, but I will not become incapable of love. They rejected me, but I will not reject myself. They treated me without mercy, but I will not surrender my heart to bitterness. This is where Christian strength begins. The world says, get even. Christ says, forgive. The world says, make them suffer. Christ says, pray for your enemies. The world says, never let anyone hurt you again. Christ teaches you to remain tender without becoming foolish, discerning without becoming hateful, strong without becoming cruel. And this is a difficult path, because resentment feels powerful, forgiveness feels weak, revenge feels satisfying, mercy feels painful. But do not confuse immediate emotional satisfaction with spiritual freedom. You can win an argument and lose your peace. You can prove that you were right and still destroy your heart. You can expose someone else's wrongdoing and still become consumed by hatred. You can get revenge and remain wounded. But forgiveness gives something revenge can never give you freedom. Look at the words of Scripture. We are repeatedly warned about bitterness because bitterness spreads. It does not remain in one corner of the heart. It moves. It affects your speech. It affects your marriage. It affects your children. It affects your friendships. It affects your relationship with God. It changes the way you interpret everything. A bitter person can receive something beautiful and immediately search for what is wrong with it. A bitter person can hear a compliment and wonder what the hidden motive is. A bitter person can experience kindness and suspect manipulation. Why? Because pain has become the lens through which they see the world. And if you stare at your wound long enough, you eventually begin to mistake your wound for reality. You start believing everyone is dangerous. Everyone will betray you. Everyone will leave you. Everyone will use you. Everyone will disappoint you. And suddenly, one person's sin becomes the definition of the entire human race. One betrayal becomes a prophecy about every future relationship. One rejection becomes a verdict about your worth. One failure becomes a sentence about your future. But your past is not God. Your wound is not God. The person who hurt you is not God, and their opinion of you is not the final word over your life. There is another voice, the voice of God, and God says you are not abandoned, you are not forgotten, you are not worthless, you are not beyond redemption, you are not defined by the worst thing that happened to you. You are not the name someone called you. You are not the rejection you experienced. You are not the betrayal you survived. You are not yesterday. You belong to God. And when God begins healing you, He does not merely remove the pain. He transforms what the pain tried to make you become. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers. They hated him. They sold him. They separated him from his family. They took away his freedom. And years later, Joseph had the opportunity to stand before those same brothers with power over them. Imagine that moment. The people who destroyed his childhood were standing in front of him. He could have said, "Now it is my turn." He could have made them suffer. He could have humiliated them. He could have returned every ounce of pain. But Joseph understood something profound. God had not brought him through suffering so that he could become like the people who hurt him. He had brought him through suffering so that his character could become greater than his suffering. And eventually Joseph could say, in essence, that what others intended for evil, God could use for good. That is a different way of seeing your life. You may say, they destroyed me. God says, I can rebuild you. You may say, they ruined my future. God says, I still hold your future. You may say, they took years from me. God says, I am not limited by the years you lost. You may say, they broke my heart. Oh, God says, give me the broken pieces. This is the invitation, not to deny your pain. Bring it. Bring the anger. Bring the disappointment. Bring the questions. Bring the tears. Bring the memories. Bring the betrayal. Bring the bitterness. But do not build your home there. There is a difference between visiting your pain and living inside it. You may remember what happened without allowing it to govern your future. You may acknowledge the injustice without allowing injustice to become your identity. You may establish boundaries without becoming bitter. You may walk away without hatred. You may say no without revenge. You may protect yourself without poisoning yourself. And this distinction is essential, because sometimes people believe Christianity means allowing everyone to continue hurting them. No, Jesus taught forgiveness, but he also taught wisdom. He taught love, but he did not teach blindness. He taught mercy, but he did not teach us to celebrate wickedness. There are situations where distance is necessary. There are situations where boundaries are necessary. There are situations where authorities must become involved. There are situations where a relationship should not be restored to what it was. But even when you walk away without allowing hatred to become your master. You can close a door without spending the rest of your life standing outside it screaming. You can release someone from your emotional prison without inviting them back into your physical life. That is wisdom. That is freedom. And perhaps you need to hear this today. Forgiveness is not primarily a gift you give to the person who hurt you. It is a surrender you make before God. You are saying, Lord, I am tired of carrying this. I have replayed it enough. I have imagined the revenge enough. I have rehearsed the conversation enough. I have tried to make them understand enough. I cannot change them, but Lord, change me. What if your greatest breakthrough is not getting an apology? What if your greatest breakthrough is reaching the point where you no longer need one in order to have peace? What if you can say, they may never admit what they did. They may never apologize. They may never understand. But I refuse to let their failure to repent become my failure to live. That is freedom. And let me tell you something else. Sometimes resentment survives because we secretly believe that if we forgive, justice will disappear. But justice does not depend on your anger. God sees, God knows, God has not missed what happened. God does not need your bitterness in order to recognize injustice. You do not have to become the judge of every person who wounded you. There is a judge greater than you. And when you surrender vengeance to God, you are not saying that evil does not matter. You are saying, God, I trust you more than I trust my desire for revenge. That is faith. Faith is not merely believing God can give you what you want. Sometimes faith is trusting God with what you desperately want to control. You want justice? Give it to God. You want an apology, give it to God. You want them to suffer, give that desire to God. You want them to understand how deeply they hurt you, give it to God and ask, Lord, what are you asking me to become through this? That question can change everything, because maybe the greatest victory is not that your enemy falls. Maybe the greatest victory is that you do not fall with them. Maybe the greatest victory is that they remain bitter, but you become peaceful. They remain angry, but you become compassionate. They remain trapped in their darkness, but you walk into the light. They continue remembering the conflict, but you begin remembering God's faithfulness. This is not weakness, this is spiritual maturity. Anyone can hate, anyone can retaliate, anyone can speak harshly, anyone can return insult for insult. But it takes grace to remain clean when someone has treated you with dirt. It takes strength to remain gentle without becoming weak. It takes courage to forgive when your emotions are demanding revenge. And this is why the command to forgive is so powerful. It is not merely about the other person, it is about who you are becoming. Every time you choose resentment, you practice resentment. Every time you rehearse revenge, you strengthen revenge. Every time you repeat the offense with hatred, you give the wound another opportunity to control you. But every time you surrender it to God, you practice freedom. Every time you pray instead of plotting, you strengthen peace. Every time you choose mercy instead of revenge, you allow God to reshape your heart. You become what you repeatedly practice. So be careful what you practice in secret, because nobody sees the arguments you have in your mind. Nobody hears the speeches you give to people who are not even there. Nobody knows how many times you have imagined what you would say if you ever got the opportunity. But God knows, and He is not condemning you, He is inviting you out. He is saying, my child, come out of this prison. You have stayed there long enough. You have carried this long enough. You have cried over this long enough. You have replayed it long enough. You have allowed it to define you long enough. There is life beyond this wound. There is joy beyond this betrayal. There is peace beyond this anger. There is purpose beyond this rejection. But you must be willing to release what you cannot change. And sometimes releasing resentment is not a one-time event. Sometimes you forgive today, and tomorrow the memory comes back. And when it does, you forgive again. You say, Lord, I already gave this to you, and I refuse to pick it up again. The memory returns, you surrender it again. The anger rises, you surrender it again. The temptation to hate returns, you surrender it again. This is not hypocrisy, this is spiritual discipline. Healing often happens gradually. A wound does not become healed merely because you declare that you are finished with it. You continue bringing it to God, and slowly the memory loses its power. The name that once made your blood boil becomes simply a name. The place that once terrified you becomes simply a place. The event that once defined your life becomes part of your story, not the whole story. And one day you realize, I remember what happened, but it no longer controls me. That is healing. And perhaps there is another emotion hidden beneath your resentment. Fear. Sometimes anger is simply fear wearing armor. You were hurt, so you became angry because anger makes you feel powerful. You were rejected, so you became cold because coldness feels safer than vulnerability. You were betrayed, so you stopped trusting because distrust feels safer than love. But safety is not always the same thing as life. If you build a wall around your heart to keep pain out, you may also keep love out. You may prevent yourself from being hurt again, but you may also prevent yourself from experiencing genuine connection again. God did not create your heart to become a fortress against everyone. He created it to become a dwelling place for Him. So ask yourself honestly, what am I protecting and what am I preventing? Am I protecting my heart, or am I preventing it from healing? Am I being wise, or am I becoming suspicious of everyone? Am I establishing boundaries, or am I building walls? There is a difference, and only God can teach you the difference. You may have been hurt by someone you loved, perhaps a family member, perhaps a friend, perhaps someone you trusted, perhaps someone you served, perhaps someone you prayed for, perhaps someone who promised they would never leave and they left. Perhaps you gave everything and they gave you betrayal in return. Perhaps you expected loyalty and received rejection, and now you are tempted to say, never again. But be careful. Never again can become a prison. Do not let one person's failure convince you that love itself is dangerous. Do not let one betrayal convince you that everyone is a betrayer. Do not let one rejection convince you that you are unworthy of being loved. You need discernment, not despair. You need wisdom, not bitterness. You need boundaries, not hatred. And above all, you need God, because there are wounds that human beings cannot heal for you. People can apologize, friends can encourage you, family can support you, counselors can help you, but ultimately there is a place in the human heart that only God can reach. And God does not merely say, stop feeling angry. He says, give me your heart. He wants the place where the resentment lives. He wants the memory you keep hiding. He wants the pain you are ashamed to admit. He wants the part of your story you do not understand. He wants the question you keep asking, why did you allow this? And perhaps He will not answer every question immediately, but He can give you His presence before He gives you an explanation. And sometimes God's presence is greater than an explanation, because you may never understand why someone did what they did. You may never understand why a door closed. You may never understand why a relationship ended. You may never understand why the betrayal happened. But you can know this: God did not abandon you in the middle of it. He was there. He saw you when nobody else saw you. He heard the prayer you could barely speak. He saw the tears you wiped before anyone noticed. He saw the nights when you wondered whether you would ever feel normal again. And if you are still here, your story is not finished. Do not make a permanent decision about your future based on a temporary season of pain. Do not say, my life is over. Do not say, I will never be happy again. Do not say, I will never love again. Do not say, I can never trust anyone. You do not know what God can do with your tomorrow. The chapter that broke you does not have to be the chapter that defines you. God is still writing. And sometimes the enemy of your soul wants you to stare so intensely at what was lost that you become blind to what remains. Look at what remains. You still have breath. You still have another day. You still have choices. You still have the ability to pray. You still have the ability to love. You still have the ability to serve. You still have the ability to become different. You still have the ability to surrender. And most importantly, you still have God. Do not underestimate what God can do with a surrendered heart, a heart that says, Lord, I am angry, but I surrendered my anger. Lord, I am hurt, but I surrender my hurt. Lord, I do not understand, but I surrender my need to understand. Lord, I want revenge, but I surrender revenge. Lord, I cannot forgive by my own strength, so teach me to forgive. That prayer may be the beginning of something new. And perhaps you are thinking, but you don't know what they did. You're right, I don't know. Maybe what they did was terrible. Maybe it was deeply unjust. Maybe it changed your life. Maybe you have every human reason to be angry. But I am not asking you to pretend it did not happen. I am asking you, how long will you allow what they did to determine who you become? Because there comes a point where the question is no longer, what did they do? The question becomes, what will I do with what they did? Will you turn the wound into wisdom? Or will you turn it into bitterness? Will you allow suffering to deepen your compassion? Or will it make you cruel? Will you allow rejection to push you toward God, or will it push you away from everyone? Will you allow betrayal to teach you discernment, or will it teach you hatred? The same fire that destroys one thing can refine another. The pain itself does not determine the outcome. Your surrender does, and perhaps today God is calling you to surrender. Not because what happened was small, but because your future is too important to sacrifice on the altar of your past. Read that again in your heart. Your future is too important to sacrifice on the altar of your past. You cannot recover yesterday by destroying today. You cannot make yourself whole by making someone else suffer. You cannot heal your heart by feeding it hatred. You cannot find peace while worshiping the memory of your pain. Yes, I said worshiping, because whatever receives all your attention begins to occupy a dangerous place in your life. If you wake up thinking about the person who hurt you, spend the day thinking about them, and go to sleep thinking about them, ask yourself, who is controlling my attention? You may say, I hate them, but you are thinking about them constantly. You may say, I don't care about them, but they occupy your mind every day. That is not freedom. Freedom is when they no longer determine the temperature of your soul. Freedom is when you can pray without mentioning them. Freedom is when you can enjoy your family without comparing them to the person who hurt you. Freedom is when you can receive love without suspicion. Freedom is when you can smile without pretending. Freedom is when you can remember without reopening the wound. And this is possible, not because you are strong enough, but because God's grace is stronger than your pain. There is a reason Scripture repeatedly calls us to put away bitterness, because bitterness never stays contained. It spreads like poison through the soil. One bitter thought becomes 10. 10 become a worldview. The worldview becomes behavior. The behavior becomes character. And eventually the person says, this is just who I am, Paul. No, that is not who you are. That is what happened to you. There is a difference. You are not your bitterness. You are not your trauma. You are not your betrayal. You are not your rejection. You are not the hatred someone planted in you. You are a person whom God can still restore. And if you have become bitter, do not hide from God. Come to Him. Tell Him the truth. Lord, I am bitter. Lord, I hate them. Lord, I want revenge. Lord, I don't want to forgive. Lord, I don't know how to release this. God already knows. You do not shock Him with honesty. He can handle your anger. He can handle your questions. He can handle your tears. But He wants you to bring them to Him instead of allowing them to rule you. There is a prayer I want you to make, not merely with your lips, but with your entire heart. Lord, take from me what I cannot remove myself, the hatred, take the desire for revenge, take the fear, take the obsession, take the memories that keep controlling me. Get rid Please make my heart clean and mercy not complete the prayer OVC mercy that it is not praying the OC me stuff for remove the suffer and the suffer true. That is the prayer of someone who has decided that hatred will not have the final word. And maybe you need to forgive yourself too, because some people are not only angry at others, they are angry at themselves. They say, how could I have been so foolish? How could I have trusted them? How could I have ignored the warning signs? How could I have stayed so long? How could I have allowed this? And now they punish themselves every day. But hear me, you cannot heal by becoming your own enemy. You made mistakes. Perhaps you ignored wisdom. Perhaps you trusted someone who was not trustworthy. Perhaps you made choices you regret. Confess what needs to be confessed. Learn what needs to be learned. Make the changes you need to make. But do not turn repentance into self-destruction. There is a difference between conviction and condemnation. Conviction says, this was wrong, turn around. Condemnation says, you are worthless, stay down. God calls you to repentance, not hopelessness. God corrects his children because he loves them. He does not destroy them because they failed. So stand up, learn, grow. Forgive, move forward, and understand this. Sometimes forgiveness is choosing not to make your pain somebody else's inheritance. If your father hurt you, do not automatically pass that anger into your children. If someone humiliated you, do not humiliate someone else. If someone manipulated you, do not become manipulative. If someone abandoned you, do not abandon everyone who tries to love you. If someone was cruel, do not allow their cruelty to reproduce itself through you. Break the chain. Let it end with you. That is powerful. You may not be able to change what happened behind you, but by God's grace, you can decide what does not continue through you. And perhaps this is one of the greatest victories available to a wounded person. I suffered, but I will not make others suffer because of it. I was betrayed, but I will remain faithful. I was rejected, but I will still love. I was hated, but I will not become hateful. I was wounded, but I will become compassionate. That is redemption. God takes what was meant to destroy you and teaches you how to use it as a place of spiritual growth. But you must surrender. You cannot ask God to heal the wound while secretly feeding the bitterness. You cannot ask God for peace while rehearsing revenge every night. You cannot ask God to free you while continually returning to the prison. At some point, you have to open your hands. You have been clenching them for too long. Open them, release them. Say, Lord, it is yours. That person is yours. That situation is yours. That injustice is yours. That memory is yours. That future is yours. My heart is yours. And then walk, not backwards, forward. There will be days when the past calls your name. Do not answer every call. There will be moments when someone reminds you of what happened. Take a breath. Pray. Remember who you are. You are not going back. There will be moments when you feel the old anger rising. Do not condemn yourself. Take it to God. There will be moments when forgiveness feels impossible. Do not pretend. Say, Lord, I am willing to become willing. Maybe today you cannot say, I forgive them completely. Then begin with the Lord, I want forgiveness. That is enough for today. God can work with a surrendered seed. You do not have to manufacture perfect emotions. You have to bring your imperfect heart, and God can transform it. One day you may discover that the thing you thought would destroy you became the place where you discovered God more deeply. You may discover compassion you never knew you had, wisdom you never had, discernment you never had, patience you never had, strength you never had. And you will look back and say, I would never have chosen that pain, but I thank God He did not waste it. That is a beautiful place to reach. Not because you celebrate the evil, but because you celebrate the redemption. The cross itself teaches us something profound. Human beings can intend evil, but God is capable of bringing redemption from places that look completely hopeless. What appears to be the end can become the beginning. What looks like defeat can become victory. What looks like death can become resurrection. So do not bury your future because of your past. Do not let resentment convince you that the story is over. It is not over. God is not finished. Your heart can heal. Your joy can return. Your capacity to trust can grow again. Your life can have meaning again. Your prayer life can become alive again. You can smile without pretending. You can love without living in fear. You can remember without being destroyed, but you must let God have the wound. So tonight, before you sleep, I want you to do something. Find a quiet place, close your eyes, and bring before God the person or situation that immediately comes to your mind. Do not justify yourself. Do not justify them. Just stand before God and say, Lord, you know what happened. You know what they did. You know what it cost me. You know how angry I am. You know how many times I have cried. You know how many times I have replayed it. Today I surrender it. I do not know how to forgive completely, so teach me. I do not know how to let go, so help me. I do not want revenge to control me. I want you to control me. I release my desire to punish. I release my need to understand everything. I release my obsession with what they are doing. I release the past, and I ask you to give me back my future. Chore and then be silent. Let God work. You may cry. Let yourself cry. You may feel anger. Bring it to Him. You may feel nothing. Bring even that. Healing is not always dramatic. Sometimes healing is simply waking up one morning and realizing, I don't think about it as much anymore. Then another morning comes and you realize, I am not angry today. Then another, and you realize, I can finally pray for them. And then one day you understand, I have forgiven them, not because they deserved it, but because God refused to let their sin destroy His work in you. That is grace. And grace does not excuse evil. Grace prevents evil from having the final word. So if you harbor resentment today, do not be ashamed to admit it, but do not make peace with it. Do not call bitterness your personality. Do not call hatred your strength. Do not call revenge justice. Do not call emotional imprisonment loyalty to your pain. You deserve freedom. And more importantly, God is calling you into freedom. You have carried this emotion long enough. You have allowed it to consume enough nights. You have allowed it to steal enough joy. You have allowed it to poison enough relationships. True, you have allowed it to interrupt enough prayers. Today, let the cycle end. The person who hurt you may never change, but you can. The past may never change, but you can change your relationship with it. The apology may never come, but peace can come. Justice may take time, but you can surrender vengeance. The wound may have been real, but healing can also be real. And remember this, forgiveness is not saying, what happened did not matter. Forgiveness is saying, what happened mattered, but it will not control the rest of my life. That sentence alone can change the direction of your heart. You are allowed to move forward. You are allowed to laugh again. You are allowed to love again. You are allowed to trust wisely again. You are allowed to dream again. You are allowed to become joyful again. You are allowed to live. The person who hurt you does not own your future. Your past does not own your future. Your mistakes do not own your future. Your rejection does not own your future. God holds your future. So lift your eyes. Stop staring at the grave of what was lost. There is still a road ahead. There are still people you have not met. There are still prayers you have not prayed. There are still places you have not gone. There are still acts of love you have not performed. There are still lessons you have not learned. There are still miracles you have not witnessed. There is still purpose. There is still breath. There is still grace. And if God has given you another morning, do not spend it worshiping yesterday. Give God today. Give Him your anger. Give Him your fear. Give Him your resentment. Give Him your questions. Give Him your brokenness. True. And trust Him enough to believe that what you surrender into His hands will not be wasted. Perhaps the greatest evidence that you are healed will not be that you forget what happened. Perhaps it will be that you can remember it without becoming the person it tried to create. You will remember the betrayal, but you will remain faithful. You will remember the rejection, but you will remain loving. You will remember the injustice, but you will remain merciful. You will remember the pain, but you will remain hopeful. And one day, when someone asks you how you survived, you will not point first to your own strength. You will say, God carried me. He carried me when I could not carry myself. He kept me when I wanted to give up. He guarded my heart when bitterness wanted to take it. He taught me to forgive when I wanted revenge. He taught me to love when I wanted to become cold. He taught me to trust again. He taught me that my wound was not my identity. And He taught me that the enemy does not get to decide what my suffering produces. So today, let bitterness lose its throne. Let resentment lose its authority. Let revenge lose its voice. Let yesterday remain yesterday. And let God have your heart. Because you were not created to spend your life rehearsing the worst thing someone did to you. You were created to know God, to love, to serve, to grow, to forgive, to become holy, to become free. And perhaps the person you need to forgive most today is not even the person who hurt you. Perhaps you need to forgive yourself for believing that you would never recover. You will recover, perhaps slowly, perhaps painfully, perhaps with tears, but you will rise because your story does not end where someone else wounded you. Your story continues in the hands of God. So release it. Not because it was insignificant. Release it because your future is significant. Release it because your peace is valuable. Release it because your children need a healed version of you. Release it because your relationships deserve the person you can become. Release it because your prayer life deserves freedom. Release it because your soul was never designed to be a storage room for resentment. Open your hands, breathe, pray, and surrender. And when the old emotion returns tomorrow, surrender again. And when it returns next week, surrender again. And when the memory returns next year, surrender again. Until one day you realize that the thing that once controlled you has become something you can place before God without fear. That is freedom. That is healing. That is grace. And if you harbor resentment today, do not let it grow quietly inside you. Take it to God while your heart is still tender, because bitterness is not harmless. It slowly changes the person carrying it, but grace changes you too. And the choice before you is not whether you were hurt. You were. The choice is what your hurt will produce. Will it produce hatred or holiness? Will it produce revenge? or wisdom? Will it produce isolation or compassion? Will it produce bitterness or deeper dependence on God? Choose carefully, because your pain is real, but it does not have to become your master. Your past is real, but it does not have to become your prison. And what someone did to you is part of your story, but it does not have to be the conclusion. The conclusion belongs to God. So go forward. Forgive where forgiveness is possible. Set boundaries where boundaries are necessary. Seek justice where justice is required. Ask for help where help is needed. But do not carry hatred where God is offering peace. Do not carry revenge where God is offering freedom. Do not carry resentment where God is offering healing. Lay it down. Lay it down today, and let God give you something better in return. Not necessarily an easier life, but a freer heart. Not necessarily an explanation, but His presence. Not necessarily the apology you wanted, but the peace you needed. Not necessarily the restoration of what was, but the transformation of what will be. And when you finally stand on the other side of this season, you will understand the greatest victory was not that the person who hurt you lost. The greatest victory was that you did not lose yourself. You did not become what wounded you. You did not allow hatred to become your identity. You did not allow bitterness to become your inheritance. You gave the wound to God, and God gave you back your heart. So if you remember nothing else, remember this: do not let someone else's sin become the architect of your soul. Do not allow their darkness to decide how brightly you will live. Do not let their betrayal teach you that love is impossible. Do not let their rejection teach you that you are worthless. Do not let their cruelty teach you to become cruel. Bring it to Christ. Bring all of it, and let Him make you new. Because the heart that has been wounded can still become a heart that loves. The heart that has been betrayed can still become faithful. The heart that has been broken can still become beautiful. And the heart that has been filled with resentment can still become a place of peace. Not because the past disappeared, but because God became greater than the past. So today, choose freedom, choose forgiveness, choose wisdom, choose peace, choose Christ, and leave the vengeance in the hands of God. You do not need to carry what He has already offered to carry for you. You have walked far enough with this burden. Now put it down and walk forward. Walk forward with tears if necessary. Walk forward slowly if necessary. Walk forward trembling if necessary. But walk forward, because there is still life ahead of you. There is still grace ahead of you. There is still purpose ahead of you. And above all, there is still God. And if God is with you, then what happened to you is not the end of your story. It is only one chapter. The page is turning. The future is still open. And by the grace of God, you will not merely survive what happened to you. You will become someone who can look back one day and say, it hurt me, it changed me, but it did not destroy me. Because God took what was broken and taught me how to live again. Amen.